Comparing the soil over, we can see the 3 stages. The first stage hasn't been turned over. Second stage has been lightly turned over with a fork or rotivated. And the third stage is where we're starting to get organic matter ready to incorporate. So give it a light turnover, maybe a light rake over with a 3-prong rake. First of all, get it sort of loosened up, and then we're starting to add some partly rotted leaf mould, wood chips. So you can see the leaves there, they're just starting to lose their shape. And then obviously, if the finer the better, especially if you're doing it in spring. So we've got, that's what you want it to look like, nice and fine like that, because we're going to rotivate that in, it's going to break it down. Or you can get your hand on some well rotted wood chip. I mean, this is like peat. That's wood chip that's well rotted. It's been in a bag. All of these leaves have been in bags for about 12 months. This wood chip's probably been about 24 months, 2 years, 18 at a minimum. You can still see bits of wood chip in there. You can see it there, but a lot of it's all broken down. It's lovely like peat. So this is what we're going to incorporate to get it ready for planting. So obviously we've dug it over very lightly first, or you could single dig the area, and then that's where you dig down a spade's depth or a fork's depth and just lightly turn it over, or dig a trench and turn it into the trench. And then we'll spread the organic matter at the top. If you've got well rotted compost, even better. We've got leaf mould, wood chip, that's all going to be mixed in, and then it'll be ready to be rotivated or dug in with a fork. So what we want to be doing is just we've emptied out the organic matter on the top, and it's just a matter of raking it over roughly level just to get an even, so you don't have to get it even as such, you just need to get it so it's evenly spread. Raking it together, and those leaves there will be fine because we'll be able to break those up with the rotavator and really mix them in with the soil, and then the bacteria that's in the soil will help to break those down even more and make the nutrients available to the plants that are going to be put in here. So it's just a matter of leveling it out and getting it sort of just evenly spread. We can get the rotavator on that and rotivate it in. So you can see that what we started off with is kind of that, which is cleared of weeds but uncultivated. We've given it an initial dig over. We've spread out the compost over the top, or the organic matter. And then at this stage here, this is what we're aiming for once it's been rotivated, is that. Then it's been gradually worked and levelled. We've used different rakes to get it to the best, finest possible outcome, which is that nice, very fine tilth that you might use for certain specialised applications. So we can see that the bed is ready to be dug in. We're putting spreading out the organic matter on the bed, compost, leaf mould, and this is the machine that we're going to use to rotivate. This one's a Meritiller. You can hire these quite cheaply from a hire store, get a weekend rate. It's better than single digging, and it's better than digging over with a fork because it's better on your back, it's quicker, and it does a great job of cutting everything up. So you can see the tines that are down there, those are the forks, the cultivators that do it. This one's a petrol motor, so we're going to switch it on. We're going to turn the choke on because it's a bit cold. We're going to turn the petrol on and lift it. So controls normally are quite easy, so you make sure you stick the revs up high as you can. And you'll see how it goes round. And you'll see an anchor there that you push down on, and you will see that what happens is, as it's rolling smoothly, the tines turn round and dig the soil up. As you can see, we're digging in our organic matter over there, like so. So the rotavator now has made mincemeat of the plot. The organic matter of this one end that was placed down has been dug in, and that's now ready to just be quickly raked over with a 3-prong rake. And that there still needs some organic matter mixing in with it, but so you can see the difference as the dark and it turns light. And that's using a rotavator, a Meritilla rotavator. You can do that with a fork or a spade, but if you've got really big areas like what we have on this site, it's better to have a machine like this, because it will do probably about 8 of these plots in a day. When getting your plot ready, you need to make sure that you decide to get the soil prepared in a way of thinking of what you're going to be planting in there. So you're going to be planting in containerised, established stuff. This is probably about ready, it just needs a quick rake over. It's been rotavated, it's been turned over with a fork, so it's ready to get started almost. It's just a final rake, and what I would use is a 3-prong rake, which is great for working with really wet soil. We've had a lot of April showers, and as you can see, what it's doing is it's helping to level out the soil. It's removing any sort of larger lumps, but for plants you don't need to get rid of you don't need to get rid of all of the stones. The tilth can be still quite coarse, and this is definitely by no means ready for planting seeds in. It needs to be drier, it will need to be consolidated, and we'll need to get rid of a lot more of the stones and lumps that are in there, and it'll need to be a lot more level. And also what you need to be looking for within the soil as you're raking it is perennial weed material. And we can see the typical switchgrass is there, and you can always tell what perennial weed material looks like because the roots are really, really big, they're not fibrous. So if we look here, we can see something that's starting to come up here. We have a dock, and what you'll see with docks and what you will see with things like convolvulus, that bindweed, and what you'll see with brambles is there is that thick root store. They've invested in their root structure and root system to provide food so that they can keep coming back. Your annual weeds wouldn't do that, but your perennial weeds that you'll see coming up in the spring that have come through the winter, these ones that we're looking for when we're raking out, those are the things that are going to come back and invade and take over the plot. So you can see with the 3-prong rake it's starting to work through the soil, and it's started to level out the area much better. So after it's been turned over or after it's been rotavated or dug over, and the key with any raking is not there for moving great amounts of soil, it's for getting rid of the humps and dips by just moving the soil very, very loosely over very short distances. It's about cultivating the soil, and it's about getting rid of any sort of big lumps or anything like that. And what you'll start to see with the 3-prong rake as well, when it is really wet like this, or if you've got really clay soil, is a nice thing is the 3-prong rake doesn't get bunged up with lots of stuff, which then hampers the job and makes it really difficult and onerous. So the 3-prong rake is great for winter work. It's great for loosening and cultivating the soil roughly, and it gives a really quick level if it's used properly. So you can still see we've still got quite a few stones there left there. I'm still starting to work out these roots that are here, and what I'm doing is I'm moving the stuff to one area, and at the moment the soil's all sticky and it's all wet. So to remove all of the stuff that's there while it's like this, you're getting rid of the soil, and you don't want to be doing that because we've spent a lot of time building it up with and enriching it with compost, but we've still got these roots and these weeds, these perennial weeds that will come back and take over. So what we're going to do is put them into one corner of the plot, wait for it to dry out, and then sieve it. So that's the best way of getting rid of it, and then you've saved a lot of your soil. Bearing in mind that natural topsoil, it probably takes about 400 years to build up naturally, so we have to conserve it as much as possible, and your raking can do a lot more damage than it can do good. The key with any type of raking is to make sure that you use your energy very wisely. And one of those tips is a lot of people tend to just dig the soil and rake it all towards them, and that's when you end up sort of moving soil rather than cultivating it, leveling it, and you end up with big piles of soil and stones that you've got to get rid of. Whereas what you want to be doing is it's a backwards and a forwards motion like this, and that's what helps you to level it, and that also helps to break up the texture of the surface. And the surface is really lumpy. If we wanted to get this ready for seed sowing, we need to make the tilth, which is that texture of the surface of the soil, we need to make it more finer, ideally like apple crumble, like the top of that for sowing seed straight into as you're doing your drills, or you're just broadcasting seed like you'd be laying a lawn, or for putting down a wildflower meadow. Now for plants that are containerized, this is getting pretty good. Maybe really small containerized stuff might be a little bit of a problem, but essentially what we want to be looking at doing is just getting it leveled off, because if it's not level or even, what will happen is the water will pool and it will dry out in spots, and you can create shadows, and if you're planting stuff in neat rows it looks terrible and you're not getting the most out of your plot or your area. So we're just leveling it off. So I can see that there's a bit there, there's a dip, so it's a matter of using your tool to do the job and trying to take out a lot of the effort that's there that we tend to use. Whereas if we use a tool efficiently, we're not in danger of hurting our backs, straining our muscles and doing unnecessary work. So as you can see, the plot has now been roughly leveled out. Just all it was that 3-prong rake, and that's the best rake to use for when you are getting an initial level or evenness on the surface to break up the tilth. You can still see bits of weed, bits of stone that are in there, but we need this to dry out, we need the wind to blow on it, and then we can start getting the finer rakes on there. So that might just be your ordinary garden rake, or a tilth rake, or a landscape rake that will get rid of all of those other bits of stones that are there, and it will get the plot ready. So I'm going to leave it uncovered. I'm not going to. You'll notice that some of the plots they've put a weed membrane down once they've got it prepared, and they will roll that back as they plant it, so that you're not constantly weeding what you've just prepared. You're only weeding around the plants that are planted. So it's a really easy way of looking after your plot. But as we can see, the next plots will get ready, and that's what that plot there, you can see how stony the soil is, how weedy it is. It now looks like that, and really you can start planting in that. Just needs one final small rake over with a finer rake, just a quick rake over, get rid of the rest of those stones, get them off the plot. But to do that it needs to dry out, it's just too wet at the moment. So as you can see, we've given it an hour or so and it's started to dry out, which is great. This is April time, you get a bit of sunshine on it, get a bit of wind, and it starts to dry out, and the top surface, or the tilth, remember we spoke about that crumbly textured surface, is starting to break down where we can get it nice and fine. And it means that we can put a rake in there, it doesn't get bunged up with mud and clay and whatever soil you're working in. So essentially we're going to be using a rake like this. The tines aren't majorly close together, and this would be your ordinary garden rake. And again, we can use this for both levelling and for taking out larger lumps and bits of weed and debris that we don't want in there. But remember, there's two sides to every rake. The other side is a great side for levelling and finishing off. It's that nice flat bit there without pulling out old stone. So what we want to try and do is get a nice crumbly, texturally feel to it. So it's a matter of going along with this rake and just taking off the surface and going over really, really carefully. So we can go then, you can see already picking up those stones that are there. You can see that we're just starting to get that nice, almost crumbly, apple crumble sort of surface. The tilth's getting finer, so it's going from that to that. We're just starting to work it. So we'll do that a bit now, and then the next thing will be consolidation. So just to give you a comparison, before and after with the finer rake, and that is more than ready for planting in anything that's containerised. It's in a pot or grown in a cell in a 6-pack that you might buy from the garden centre or from B&Q or supermarket. That's ready for even the smaller type stuff, but it's still not quite ready for seed. So basically it's a matter of just working the other side of the rake over and just to roughly get it there. But what we need to do now is to consolidate, and consolidation is literally just treading down, and what it's doing is it's breaking down any lumps that would be there within the soil, breaking them down, getting rid of any air pockets. So if this was a lawn that you were putting it in, what you don't want is to have a sudden soft bit that you didn't know about, and when the lawn's done you walk on it and it suddenly sinks and the lawn's uneven, and then when you go to mow it causes problems. So what you're looking at is just digging your heels in. So I'm digging the heel, not using all of my shoe, and that's what it looks like when it's consolidated. So you can see those nice footprints, and just keep going up and down. You only have to do it once. Be careful when it's really wet doing this, especially if you've got clay soil, because you can smear it over and cause more problems. So really, if you've got clay soil, this is quite sandy, loamy soil, so even though it's quite damp and wet and we've had some showers and rain on it, it's good enough and ready now to do it. And this is what will help us to get that nice even surface and that nice till. So if you're laying turf on top of it, or if you're putting down seed, as in grass seed, or if you're putting down seed where you're broadcasting it and just scattering it over the whole of the area, you must consolidate, you must tread it down. You can use a garden roller, but it's just as easy with your feet, and you're in more control of it. So the whole of the area is consolidated. You can see the difference now between the two areas. And so now very, very gently going over the surface with the rake. Yeah, we don't want to be moving stuff about, we don't want to move in soil, we just want to fill in those divots and turn it over like that. Turn the rake over so that you get a nice flat even surface, because you need all your plants. If you're doing a lawn, it needs to be flat and even for when you mow it. If you're putting in seed drills, or if you're planting plants, you need the surface to be nice and even. Otherwise you'll get pockets where there's too much water, pockets where it's too dry. Some plants will be shadowing others, and if it's, obviously this is a veg plot, but if it's within a situation where you've planted out a nice bed for somebody to look at and it's all uneven and the plants have been in all uneven, it will look terrible. So this is just a finishing touch, and it is a light touch. I'm barely moving stuff, I'm not putting any weight on the rake, I'm letting the weight of the rake go over the soil just to get it nice and even. The 3 additives that you want to be adding into the soil at this point, just a sprinkle on the top. So on the area that we've just done there, you can see the contrast. Probably just a pot, a plant pot of each, or a cup and a half or something like that. And the 3 additives are lime, which is to help with pH, which is looking at the acidity of the soil. This is quite acidic, it's sandy, stony soil. We've put a lot of compost, wood chip, especially from conifers, and leaf mould in. That tends to make it pretty acidic, which makes it difficult for plants to take up nutrients when it's too acidic. So we're trying to get it closer to neutral. Obviously we don't want it the other way, because the alkaline, again, they struggle to take up the nutrients out of the soil and they look starving. Another one is fertiliser, so that's fish blood and bone, so that's a nice organic base fertiliser. And another thing we add is wood ash, which helps develop fruit and flowers. The fish blood and bone is more of an all-rounder, so fish blood and bone tends to sort of be developing roots, developing leaves, and developing stems and flowers and fruit, whereas the wood ash helps to just sort of add that potash to it that it needs. And we've sieved out all of the nails, etc. So what we don't want to see in there is coal. It has to be wood ash. Coal will make it more acidic because it's full of sulphur. And then there's the crushed limestone or garden lime that you can buy from hardware stores, garden centres, nurseries. They'll sell them. Buy it by the bag or by the box or by the pot. And what we're going to do is sprinkle it evenly over the surface. So the first one that we'll do, and you only do this in the springtime really, because you don't want it to all wash through. So we'll put down the wood ash. So it's a nice little sprinkling over the top. Obviously on a windy day you tend to lose a lot of it. So that's sprinkled out over there. Then it's the lime. And again, it's a matter of trying to get it as even as possible, working with the wind. Any bits that you see, like in the corners where you've missed it, all around the edges. And then very liberally, we'll put on some fish blood and bone, just to give the plants that start. It'll be ready for them once they start growing, but in a vegetable plot, traditionally speaking, you're going to be using a liquid feed that's going to help the plant take up the nutrients when it can. Now the other thing that I have got, and I've left the rake upside down like that on purpose, not because I want someone to trip over it and step on it, but because I want to show you the tines on this one. This one is a tilth rake, so you'll notice the difference that we can make with this. This is an amazing rake. Tines are much closer together. We get a really, really lovely finish, especially for seeds. You wouldn't use this in all applications, but certain applications it's great. You get a lovely, nice finish. And what we're doing is we're just raking that fish blood and bone and ash and lime into the surface and getting this wonderful tilth. You can see there, and again you can use both sides. So you can use it like that. It's got a lovely way of getting a nice tilth. So I'll finish that off and then you'll be able to see it. See, there's a massive contrast. So we've done it with the real fine tilth rake now, and those nutrients have been added in, the fish blood and bone, lime and the wood ash. So that's it, finished with the tilth rake level. That's perfect. That's for any application, but more in particular if you're doing real fine seed. And the next one is with the garden rake. So it's level. It's gotten a little bit more lumpy with the tilth. It's not as fine as before. And then that's where we started earlier, just with the 3-prong rake. This one would be more for commercial jobs, where you're planting large trees and specimens in, whether it be bare root or containerised, or if you were sowing a wildflower meadow along the side of a motorway. And then you're starting to get into the realms of commercial jobs where there's an aesthetic quality to it, on a car park or by some shops, or where you're planting quite large containerised stuff. And then you're sort of going into the realms of a private garden or allotment. And really the allotment is where you hit to at the end, or if you're trying to grow some really, really fine quality turf. So there's your 3 sort of ways of preparing the ground ready for seed sowing and or planting. The waste that comes off allotments, or when you're out preparing the site for planting or seed sowing, a lot of it's stones, rubble. Obviously you get weed matter. Organic matter you can compost, but we spoke about those perennial weeds, especially the roots. Best to try and get rid of those either. I mean, the old days you used to burn it, but now that's not ideal. So what people tend to do is they tend to look at putting it into general waste, or putting it in a compost that heats up, pasteurises itself, and that's through turning it constantly and mixing it with a good carbon nitrogen ratio, so that the bacteria heats it up and sterilises it, or just burying it or putting it in bags for years and years, and then eventually it'll be totally and utterly broken down and there'll be none of it left whatsoever, making sure there's some moisture in there to break it down. And obviously things like stones and concrete you can use in all sorts of ways. As you can see around the allotment here, people have used stones to mark out paths and use concrete to weigh down any material, fleece or any weed membrane that they put down. Or if you've got an area that is really, really wet at the bottom of a slope, stones make a great drainage system, or you can make a path out of them. So it's trying to think carefully how you'd use it, or you can take it to landfill I mean, plastic is general waste. If it's clean, you can recycle it, but generally this dirty plastic has to go in general waste. And again, there's some companies that will take concrete and stones and crush it and turn it into a cheap hardcore. And like wood, any branches, if you can use it for something, or chip it and turn it into compost, that would be really a sensible way and an environmentally sound way of disposing of the waste.